also with all of the tech support, Natalia Jordan, Jasmine Goda, the HRE USA communications team who do so much and provide so much essential contributions that increase our outreach and educational efforts this year and many different years also. But thank you all for being here. Also to you all who are here with us today, and again, I won't name everyone, there's too many folks to name, but thank you for making HRE USA thrive these past 11 years. Oh my gosh, 11 years, it's amazing. And our members, first and foremost, are loyal individual and organizational donors, project partners, just folks that are providing substantial in-kind and also financial support. We also want to honor our fiscal sponsor, the Center for Transformative Action and the Puffin Foundation. All of them, they enable us to collectively work for human rights and justice, and help us increase our expanding human rights learning and action network across the country. So I'm so excited. Can we just give some applause or some love, or some words in the chat, because this is all you all who make this possible. And we do use this day as a day to celebrate, but we also don't celebrate enough all the efforts that you all take. So thank you so much. Yeah, well, let's move on. We have a full agenda, so I want to make sure we get to everyone. So I am actually very, very excited to move on to our HRE USA Impact Award. So I'm actually going to introduce, I have the honor and I have the privilege of introducing Mariana Leal Ferreira. So HRE USA's 2017 O'Brien Award recipient, and also one of the nominators for HRE USA's first Impact Award to the International Indian Treaty Council. So welcome, and I'm going to transition it over to you, Mariana, but thanks for being here today. So yeah.
Thank you, Marissa. I'm very glad to be here today and honored to be celebrating the International Human Rights Day today, and also celebrating the first Human Rights Education Impact Award presented to the International Indian Treaty Council in recognition of their work of 50 years, 5 decades of defending the human rights of Indigenous peoples. As one of the nominators for International Indian Treaty Council for this HRE Impact Award, I'd like to recognize IITC's board member, Bill Means, board member and founder, by the way, as well as Lisa Bellinger, who's Pat Bellinger's daughter, and who's now a board member as well. And also thank Andrea Carmen for being the executive director of IITC for 30 years. That's like 3 decades. That's a long time. Thank you, Andrea, very much. And this webinar, that's just about what I have to say. So thank you all for putting it together. And yes, we do need to commemorate more of our victories. So thanks. And I look forward to the rest of the event.
Thank you, Mariana. And I will just mention also Morningstar Galley, who received the Impact Award at a reception at the University of San Francisco, who's the California Tribal and Community Liaison for IITC. And we also have a webinar that these wonderful folks put on October 24th that will be available on our website for viewing. So Andrea, thank you for being here. And thank you, Mariana.
Thank you for asking me and for your ongoing, continuing support of the rights of Indigenous peoples and the International Indian Treaty Council, which stretches from Alaska to Argentina out to the Caribbean and the Pacific Islands, defending in a relationship of solidarity the rights of Indigenous peoples. So our partnership with your program goes way back. We've been hosted there on several meetings many years ago, and we're very happy to keep working together and very honored by your recognition. I'm going to be just doing a very brief update. I spent longer the last time I spoke in the forum that was organized previously, and I focused on the rights of Indigenous peoples in relationship to the upcoming work at the 27th Conference of the Parties in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. So because I left things hanging, we were about to go over there, I just want to give you some updates, and also just to show you that this work is continuous. It takes persistence. It is a trajectory of many, many decades for the rights of Indigenous peoples. And just to remind you that IATC was founded in 1974, almost 50 years now. And we were the first Indigenous organization to be recognized with what's called consultative status by the UN Economic and Social Council. But we continue to maintain the founding principle that Indigenous people speak for themselves and represent themselves before the world community. Here's just a couple of our youth doing so. We're very proud of involvement of young people and the future leaders of these struggles in our work. Next slide, please. I want to remind you all that we base this work on rights that were recognized long before there was such a thing as the United Nations, before there was a Universal Declaration on Human Rights, before there was a UN Declaration on Rights of Indigenous Peoples, all the way back to the time of nation-to-nation treaty signing, which we continue to assert those rights at the United Nations. And just to recall that the Fort Laramie Treaty, signed in 1868 between the Ochete-Sacoan and the United States of America, affirms the right to consent, that now is the right to free prior informed consent that we take with us into all the UN bodies. Next slide, please. Just to show you what we look like as the Indigenous Caucus. It's the short word for the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Climate Change. This is a picture of one of our preparatory meetings. In the back is the Red Sea. We really were in Egypt. And part of our opening statement that we agreed to by consensus, and there's Indigenous peoples from all the regions, all 7 regions there, is that we commit to real solutions based on our knowledge, practices, and time-tested sciences, and the full exercise of our rights at the United Nations and in our own territories. So we take the work for human rights, for rights of Indigenous peoples into every corner of the world and every body of the United Nations now. Next slide. It was very important, the rights-based approach. Here are some of our youth from one of the COPs. Again, COPs stands for Conference of the Parties, and the parties are the states. So we're there advocating, but we don't have a vote. Otherwise, I think these things would turn out a lot different. But this time, a key for us was to maintain the commitment to Indigenous peoples' rights related to market mechanisms, carbon trading, which we don't really like, but it's in the text all the way back from COP21 in Paris, the Paris Agreement. But we are really pushing for the creation of a grievance mechanism for Indigenous peoples that are impacted or threatened by false solutions, as we call it. So this was a big focus for us and will continue to be. Next slide. This is just an example of one of IATC's events there. It's a side event in the Indigenous Peoples Pavilion that we collectively had there, and it's focused on the food systems of Arctic Indigenous peoples, reindeer and caribou peoples. And you can see up speaking in the front were Gwich'in, Dene from Canada, Athabaskan from Alaska, and Sami presenters. And we were really gratified by the turnout, not just Arctic Indigenous peoples, but our right to food and food sovereignty is one of the areas that is under serious threat by climate change. Next slide. A very important aspect this year, for the first time is the officially recognized role, leadership, and participation of Indigenous youth. You can see these are the two moderators of a presentation by Indigenous youth to the states, to the countries. Chris Honani on the left, a young staff member of the International Indian Treaty Council and a Hopi traditional farmer. And on the right is an Indigenous young woman from Russia, who were selected to be the co-moderators. And this was an official session for the first time the youth had that space that was recognized. Next slide. Another important gain there was that Indigenous peoples are going to be included in a new advisory board addressing loss and damage and providing technical assistance to the states under what's called the Santiago Network. And of course, the loss and damage we're experiencing is extreme, but we have to assert our rights in this process to prevent loss and damage is our core objective. Next slide. Of course, everyone already heard this. COP27 failed to produce significant progress on commitments by states to phase out fossil fuels. And we addressed this in the final press release that the caucus made, lamenting and expressing our alarm and opposition that the parties failed to agree on strong language to keep the temperature rise to what Indigenous peoples' ways of life can survive. So onward and upward. Next slide. We are committed to addressing states. This is me talking to Nancy Pelosi. She's really examining my Maori tattoo, but we're talking about what's going on there. And also I express my sympathies and condolences to what happened to her husband. Quite terrible. But we also met with John Kerry, and the US has made a commitment to include tribal nations, but we still don't have a specific mechanism to address this. So this is a big demand, both on the national and international level, and not just lip service that, yes, we should be part of the discussion, but we need to be part of the decision-making as well. Next slide. I think this is my final slide. Our work is continuing. We're planning for the next Conference of the Parties, 28, which will be in Dubai, another big oil producing Arab country, just like Egypt. And that was part of the challenge there. But the most important thing is building our resiliency at home. These are desert Hopi farmers, and they grow all this corn without any running water, any irrigation. It's all rain and snow melt for them, which means they have some of the most drought-resistant seeds in the world. And we grew that white corn on our land in Tucson, Arizona this year. So very important, the relationships and the work among Indigenous peoples, whatever the governments and the UN decide to do or not, we have to depend on our own resiliency. So Chokwe Utesia, thank you very much. And this is just a little piece of our work, one aspect, but something that's very important to all of us and shows how we continue to take a rights-based approach in these UN bodies and assert the participation and the knowledge and the rights of Indigenous peoples. Thank you. Chokwe Utesia.
Thank
Thank
you.
Your answer can be Ewi.
Ewi. Ewi.
Ewi means like right on. You can say
Right on.
right on.
Thank you.
Ewi. Okay.
We are so grateful for all that you're doing and all, both for the past 50 years and your continued work. It's inspirational, and we're so happy that you were able to receive this first ever Impact Award as a small recognition, but you've made great impact. So thank you. And thank you, Mariana, for the introduction. And I wanted to make one quick shout out to another human rights education leader, sister. She spoke as our keynote 2 years ago and has received a Genius Award, the MacArthur Genius Award, and that's Loretta Ross. So Loretta, we're so happy for you for having received that wonderful work for all of that you've been doing in reproductive justice and racial justice and human rights education. So thank you very much.
Can I just speak up and say I want to honor Ingrid Washington-Watuk, who of course I've worked with before her unfortunate passing, and that's where I first heard of the IITC. So we also want to bring our ancestor into this work.
Thank you. And she was one of my best friends as young women doing this work and rising up, you know, in recognition. So thank you for mentioning Ingrid and all of those who've gone before us in this work.
Thank you. And I know she touched so many of our hearts and our work, and has a keep pursuing more and more what we need to be doing. So thank you. And thanks again, Loretta, for your leadership too. I will now introduce Sandra Sirota, who will be introducing the University and College Consortium Human Rights Education Higher Education Award recipient. And Sandra actually is a longtime Human Rights Educators USA member, and she even did her PhD on this network of how it can be so continue to be vibrant and moving forward in a good direction. So Sandra.
Thank you. So I'm delighted to be here among such a powerful and compassionate group of people from my past, present, and hopefully you're all in my future. I wish we could all grab a meal after, but it's just so wonderful to be here and reunite every year at this event. And I am delighted to present the second annual UCC HRE Human Rights in Higher Education Award to Dr. Michelina Shea, not only because she's a distinguished scholar in human rights, but because she was my human rights professor many years ago when I was earning my master's degree in human rights. So it's just wonderful to have this moment. I'll say a bit about Micheline, but her accomplishments are many, and we don't have the whole hour to talk about them, but I do want to share with you some important parts of her work. And so Michelina Shea is a political scientist known for her work in political theory, international relations, human rights, foreign policy, and the Middle East. She's a professor of international studies and human rights at the Joseph Corbell School of International Studies at the University of Denver, where I earned my master's degree and where she was named Distinguished Scholar, and where she founded Corbell's International Human Rights Program over almost 2 decades. And over that time, it became one of the country's top graduate programs in human rights. Micheline's work spans the globe, and she has focused particularly on the Middle East. And she was one of the first people to teach a human rights course in the Arab world during the Arab Spring. And she was able to meet regularly with diplomats, world leaders, scholars, journalists from the US, the West, and the Arab world. And she learned from Emirati and Arab nationals about their hopes and fears during the Arab Spring. Her latest project, which is tentatively titled Atlas Unbound, Internationalism and the Future of Human Rights, draws on the failures and successes of old internationalist experiments to propose constructive possibilities for global governance based on universal rights to address current challenges with a particular focus on the global south. So as you can see, she's done quite a lot for human rights and higher education, and this is only a small snippet of her accomplishments, but I'd like to turn it over so we can hear from herself. Micheline, congratulations on your award, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for this wonderful introduction, and thank you to all of you for this very nice award. I was not expecting it, and so that really touched me. Forgive me for my voice today. I will just try to carry it as best as I can. But to the University and College Consortium for Human Rights Education, thank you a lot. That means a lot to me. Christina Eberbach, Sandra Sirota, I know there are others, Sarita Kargas, I know we're part of the committee. So thank you to all of you and all those who I don't recognized. Thank you as well. And so I was asked by Christina to address the question of why we do need human rights in higher education. So I will take that question to mean why we need it in all levels of education, from primary school through graduate school. At the very beginning of this session, I heard people just trying to pinpoint the days, which is today the 74th anniversary of the Genocide Convention, which was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly on December 9th, 1948. And of course, genocide and crimes against humanity did not end that day and continue with vengeance as I speak. The genocide did not occur because its perpetrators lacked education, and some of the masterminds of the Holocaust were formerly brilliant students. So the importance of human rights education is really to give citizens the tool to resist the appeals of demagogues who are espousing murderous ideologies. From primary school on, we really need to impart an entrenched capacity to understand that human rights belong to all people, regardless of race and ethnic background and gender, and that these rights are truly universal, inalienable, and indivisible. These are values that can be simply explained to children and whose complexities and challenge should be really central concern of higher education. Yet, as of now, a great majority of well-intentioned people, students in high school and college, and many professors at universities, do not know the fundamental of human rights, the corpus of human rights, the mechanism, the institution that safeguard this principle. So we can see that at worst, human rights is ignored or even attacked. I see MA and PhD students writing theses on international studies that simply omit ethical and normative concern as if they were fluffy or not rigorous. And while human rights is itself a field of studies, it needs to be incorporated far more across the disciplines and in the sciences as well. At best, on a line of attack on human rights, claims that because institutions of human rights are impotent, one should look elsewhere for justice. Others seek to supplement the term of human rights with the concept of social justice, which is fine. But unfortunately, the meaning of social justice is not always sufficiently spelled out unless it's linked to the history and to historical debate within that human rights tradition. I also hear that because the human rights movement failed to do enough during and after the Cold War, it should be seen as complicit to the neoliberal order's growing inequity. Of course, I would say that even poorly argued critique are healthier than complete sheer ignorance. But those are times that are different, they are dark, and they call for a renewed and forceful reclamations of academic training in human rights so that students and activists like the wonderful person I heard today, Andrea Carmen, can better fight leaders and movements that seek to reverse hard-won progress, rather than blaming or weakening the champions of human rights movement, prioritizing possibly one cluster of rights against another, elevating one region over another or one group against another, a collective and reflective understanding of the long historical traditions of human rights and its manifold traditions in academic setting is now ever more urgent. I've spent a great deal of my career writing books and articles on human rights, both in the privileged and underprivileged part of the world, along with strengthening the human rights curriculum and my own school at the Corbell School of International Study. I began at the time when there was a real euphoria peaking due to the collapse of the Berlin Wall. But at that prematurely declared end of history, I thought it would be best to unearth a different history of human rights that would hopefully contribute to the training of a new generations of human rights scholars. I don't think that one never write one last word on this issue because human rights is an unfinished labor. But more than when I began my career, I think that we now need to make sure we rekindle our efforts in educating future human rights scholars, teachers, and activists in a world that face mounting challenges to human rights progress. That goal has arguably become even more important than it was decades ago when the field first emerged. So with this final note, I want to again thank you very much for this award and turn my attention and turn to my host and thanks them again for giving me that platform and that award. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Micheline. Yes, let's all shout out, emoji. That was wonderful and has given us challenges. And as you indicated, it's a continual goal that we need to keep working at and be vigilant. And thank you, Sandra, for the introduction too. Marissa?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Another applause for folks. So I'm very pleased to next announce or introduce, I should say, the HRE USA O'Brien Award. So this was an award, if folks don't know, that was established in 2015 in memory of Ed O'Brien, who was a pioneer human rights educator and a truly valued member of HRE USA. So this particular award and the individual award, O'Brien Award, honors an outstanding contributor to human rights education across the United States. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce the 2022 O'Brien awardee, who will awardee Emma Fuentes, who is Associate Professor and International Multicultural Education from the University of San Francisco, one of the nominators for this year's recipient. So I'm going to pass it over to Emma, who will introduce Professor Susan Katz. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Marissa, and to everyone here today. It's wonderful to be with you all. My name is Emma Fuentes, and it's my honor today to introduce my beloved colleague, mentor, and friend, Dr. Susan Katz. I consider it such a blessing that I have been able to work alongside and learn from Susan for all these years. Professor Susan Roberta Katz has been an educator for approximately 5 decades, first as a middle school educator who always taught me to never leave behind your heart of a teacher, even in higher ed. Then as a teacher educator and professor of education in both New Mexico and in California, and for over 2 decades at the University of San Francisco. She recently retired from our department, and I love that we get to continue to celebrate with her and that she's the recipient for this year's HRE USA O'Brien Award. Through institution building and the creation of university level courses, concentration and programs, Susan has centered human rights education as a lens for work and scholarship in education, as well as working to legitimize human rights education as a field within the broader discipline of educational research. Inspired by Susan's leadership and her excitement, our department created a few classes at first, doctoral level and master's level classes in human rights education in 2008. And because out of those classes, student interest grew so much that we decided to, with Susan and other faculty members in our department, proposed a brand new first of its kind Master's of Arts in Human Rights Education. And to date, it is still the only master's program in human rights education anywhere in the world. Many of the students in Susan's classes have learned about human rights in interactive, critical, grounded, and meaningful ways, and have gone on to share her commitment and passion for human rights by taking what they've learned in her classroom and in communities, whether it's San Francisco, Colombia, Ecuador, out into the world and to share. Her class has produced dozens and dozens of advocates of human rights education, working in educational and community-based settings across the Bay Area and across the country. Her commitment to HRE and the implementation of our program has had a transformative impact on us as faculty, on our students, and on our whole School of Education. Her passion and commitment started as an individual engagement with the field of HRE, and because of who she is as a scholar, advocate, and activist, has grown into a rooted program that has deeply influenced HRE within higher education. We are so lucky to have worked and learned alongside of Susan, and I can't think of a better recipient for this important award. Hand it over to you, Dr. Kat.
Thank you so much. So I have some slides to show, if we could have the slides, but happy Human Rights Day to everyone here. It is such a great honor to share this space with the International Indian Treaty Council, with Michelle and Issei and all the other awardees today. And I want to emphasize how much this award reflects a collective effort to bring human rights education to the University of San Francisco and beyond, and to build the first graduate program in human rights education in the US. I would say, yes, I planted a seed years ago, but it's been my colleagues, staff, and students who have enabled this program to bloom and grow. And the pictures here show my amazing department as well as colleagues in the School of Education. And I want to keep this up for a second. So I want to give a special shout out to three particular people. First is Emma Fuentes, who just introduced me, and she's our department chair. And she has devoted so much love and vision to me and our department and our students. And also just a couple of years ago, initiated a new concentration in racial justice and education that aligns so well with HRE. And then there's Monisha Bajaj, who's pictured here, and many of you know, who we were able to steal from Teachers College just in 2013 to direct the very first master's in HRE. And her already established worldwide reputation as a leading human rights scholar gave us clout. And then after she came to USF, she also launched the student-run, really, International Journal of Human Rights Education, which won the UCC HRE Award last year. And finally is our dean, Shabnam Karala-Azad, who's pictured in the bottom photo, lying on the ground, because she's our foundation, she's our rock in grassroots and humanizing education. In 2008, she was a brand new faculty member and worked with me to co-found the human rights concentration that Emma spoke about. And not pictured here, but equally or more important, are our students who really grew human rights education to new heights and depths in their own work as teachers, scholars, and activists. Some students are here today, so shout out to all of you. So I've been really, really lucky to have been in this community all these years, really blessed. Next slide, please. I also want to recognize community partners who I've been able to work with from the very start. The first is Voice of Witness, which is an organization that publishes oral histories around human rights issues, and also The World as It Could Be below, which is an organization that inspires youth to address human rights issues through the performing arts. And thank you specifically to Cliff Mayotte and Aaron Vaughn of Voice of Witness, who I believe also received one of these awards a few years ago, and Sandy Sokot and Ellen Sebastian Chang of The World as It Could Be, who have been featured speakers in my classes. So I just want to emphasize how much this is a collective effort. The next slide, please. I want to close, I'm sort of playing teacher here, but I have a message to all the teachers out there who are interested and committed to bringing human rights to your classrooms. I want to leave you with 3 points. First point, I think you need to click. Yeah. Expand notions of human rights beyond the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We're here today to celebrate the 74th birthday of this incredible, aspirational, inspirational declaration. But I also think it's really important to not stay confined to only teaching that. Bring in other documents, bring in other successes like the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and have your students compare their different times, different places. What rights do students see in DRIP that are not in the UDHR, for example? Second point, I'd like to talk forever, but I can't. Okay, the next point, incorporate oral history into your curriculum. From my time as a middle school teacher through teaching master's and doctoral students, oral history has been my favorite and I think the most effective pedagogical tool, because it's a way for students to be able to bring in the voices of people who are so often underrepresented, misrepresented in history. The third point, integrate a joyful spirit into all you do. I was really impressed or moved by Bill Simmons' book, Joyful Human Rights. And this has changed my teaching in the last couple of years. And he cautions us not to focus only exclusively on human rights violations and suffering, but also bring out the victories and bring out the joy that is involved in collective struggle. So I leave you with those messages. I put my email here. If any of you would like to talk further about this ideas, I would love to do it. And this is a picture of one of the human rights education classes at the end. So thank you so much to HRE USA. Thank you to all of you who have been my mentors in this work, and congratulations to us all.
Thank you so much, Susan. Let's all give another round of applause or shout outs and emoji. Thank you very much for both your leadership. I think those 3 points, the challenges for us to continue to improve our pedagogical work in this field as well. And thank you, Emma, for the lovely introduction. And I want to also recognize May O'Brien, who's Ed O'Brien's wife, who's on this call, and thank you for your continued support of HRE USA. And we obviously love Ed and are honored to be able to have this award. And Nancy Flowers, who for each year has been able to pull together a wonderful team of kind of reviewers for this award. So thanks again to all the leadership and folks that go into making this happen. Now we'll turn to basically a wonderful new accomplishment that's fresh off the press, and that is a book called The Human Rights Imperative for Teacher Education. And this was edited by our wonderful Gloria Alter and Bill Fernikes, and a number of Human Rights Educators USA members have written chapters in this publication. And Gloria actually asked me to read a few words. It's the human rights imperative in teacher education is built upon the collaboration of HRE leaders and scholars to address the global historical and theoretical roots and persistence challenges of HRE. It incorporates international perspectives, including the Global South, and describes HRE in the intersecting context of global citizenship and democratic education. This work both provides an introduction to HRE and extends knowledge of HRE, while supporting the ability of educators to apply it in a variety of contexts. Most importantly, it serves as a reminder of the phenomenal responsibility we each have to offer compassion, understanding, and advocacy toward all people without exception. The contributions of authors, those whose reviews were quoted in the book, and those who gave permissions to use their excellent photos are greatly appreciated. So now I would like to introduce Bill Fernikes, who is currently on our Human Rights Educators USA Steering Committee. And he's not only a prolific writer and editor of this publication, but he also is going to be launching an exciting new 75th anniversary podcast for HRE USA. So Bill, are you online and would you like to say a few
I'm
words?
here. Can you hear me there, Christy?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Well, it's a great pleasure to be here, and I'm very pleased that everyone has been making such important contributions in the conversation about where we need to go with human rights education. I think Dr. Ishay said it very well, that we can't stand on our laurels. We have to keep pushing forward. And one of the important parts of this book is that it tries to give both a theoretical and a practical component for educators at all levels so that they can make human rights education a central feature of their daily work. So we worked hard to provide that theoretical foundation. We also then provided an international set of authors that would give perspectives that would not necessarily be heard by people in the United States in a classroom. And third, we wanted to have very practical suggestions, not only for classroom use, but for people who are actually working with teachers to train them either before they enter the classroom or when they're in the classroom. So we feel very positive about the book. And I think that if people feel that it's something they can use, we'd love to have feedback on it, because it just came out in October, and the contributors, as Christy mentioned, many of them are from either the advisory board or are members of HRE USA, and we're very grateful for their work.
And now I think we have a 30-second snippet, a teaser for our podcast to showcase. Jake, are you able to do that?
Coming early in 2023, Human Rights Education Now, a podcast from HRE USA featuring the ideas and experiences of human rights educators and how they are transforming education in the USA. Stay tuned and check the HRE USA website for updates. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. This is an exciting forthcoming concrete action that we're undertaking. And I just want to thank again Bill and Sabrina Sanchez, who has been really instrumental in kind of visioning this, as well as the designer for the graphic, Kim Baring, and Jasmine has just been wonderful supports. So thank you all. And there's something you can look forward to. So now I'm going to introduce Julie Rinker, who is our very first summer teacher fellow. We have not had a teaching fellow. And so Julie, are you there? And would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. I am a dyslexia teacher and dyslexia teacher trainer in Dallas. And this summer I was able to take part in reviewing the library resources that Human Rights Educator USA provides free of charge to teachers. And this was particularly helpful for me as a teacher and as a teacher trainer, because so much of what our students do is not prescribed for them. We have to teach it specifically within our scope and sequence, but we get to choose what our students are reading, and their ability to understand that text at a deep level. So I saw a huge opportunity for human rights education to fit into that practice, but I didn't have that education. And so I've been in the process of educating myself over the last few years, and I'm thankful for the ways that human rights educators has helped to educate me, and also just thankful for the opportunity to partner to making sure the library is full of resources that we can bring to our students tomorrow. If you've got 20 minutes to find a resource, you want to know that the resource is going to be good, which isn't always the case for teachers in the public school system. So yes, I'm eager to share these resources broadly with the teachers that I work with, and then just across America as we're able. So thank you for the time today.
Thank you, Julie. And I think now we're going to turn it over to Christina.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Christina Eberbach, co-chair of Human Rights Educators USA and the University and College Consortium for Human Rights Education. It's nice to see everyone. I'm going to be introducing or sharing a couple other initiatives that HRE USA has supported over this last year. The first is the Training as Action series, otherwise known as TAS, which builds on a successful pilot year last year. And we would just like to thank and recognize our 10 collaborating partners or sponsors. Jake, if you don't mind going to the next slide, please. So this is the idea. We have a lot of collective knowledge and expertise among this wonderful network. And the idea was to share out and provide professional support to one another and to teachers and educators in this space on a variety of themes that are listed there. And we would like to thank Kaylee Bradford, who is the professional development consultant, as well as a number of facilitators and supporters who were either individual members from partner organizations, steering committee members, and HRE USA fellows. So we hope that you all will join us for future workshops. And if you're interested in facilitating, or if you have certain topics that you're interested in learning more about, please reach out to myself or Christy. Next, I would like to introduce our HRE USA Edmonds Summer Fellows. So this fellowship was started in honor of Kirby Edmonds, who was a steering committee member for many years, and we wanted to honor his work and his legacy. And so this fellowship is intended to support young youth who are interested in human rights education by giving them hands-on experience in human rights education, supporting initiatives of HRE USA. And our 3 fellows this year were Veronica Beto, Hallie McGray, and Natalie Roach. And we have a video from Veronica, and then we have Hallie here in person who will also share a few words. So first we'll do the video from Veronica.
Hi, my name is Veronica Valencia Beto. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a graduate of Rutgers University in New Brunswick, class of 2021. I studied political science with a minor in Middle Eastern Studies. This past summer, I had the great opportunity to be an Edmonds Fellow. I insisted in supporting the Human Rights Educators organization by supporting our fundraising strategy and helping create the content. Along with my co-fellow Hallie, we worked on interviewing partners to learn more about them, engage with them, and highlighting why human rights education is important, as well as looking for any advice or any insight we could use to help move the organization forward, helping, fill in our database so we can look back to it to really help the organization. Now, this experience has been an opportunity for me to grow and to really evaluate how I approach human rights issues in the future. I'm grateful for the opportunity, to my supervisors and the team I got to work with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Veronica Valencia Beto, her, hers. I am a graduate of Rutgers University in New Brunswick.
Thank you. We will now hear from Hallie, who was another fellow and who also contributed to the Training as Action series. Hallie?
Hi, thank you, Christina, and thank you, everybody. It's been really great hearing about all of your work and how passionate everybody is about human rights advocacy. So thank you all for having me here. Veronica touched a bit on what we did as Edmonds Fellows this past summer, and I worked alongside her on the community engagement and development team with the Edmonds Fellowship. So I'll just briefly touch on some of the things that Veronica talked about, but we worked on fundraising efforts and we were able to raise money to continue the Edmonds Fellowship in the future, so other youth activists have the opportunity to get involved in human rights advocacy. We were able to conduct community outreach interviews and profiles. Some of you I was able to talk to over the summer, so it's great to see you all again. And we were able to publish these interviews on the HRE USA website to publish some of the work that our network members are doing, and in an effort to connect with other organizations more deeply. We laid the framework also for developing an HRE USA youth activism focus. So as someone who began their journey into human rights advocacy as a youth activist, and I'm continuing in that role now, I can say firsthand that having connections to and mentorship from advocates who've been in this field for longer than I have has been extremely valued. I learned great deals from my mentors in various settings. Some of them are on here from HRE, from Human Rights Watch Student Task Force, and from other organizations. And this has impacted my work, you know, in the past couple of years. And I know that I will hold the experiences that I've learned for years into the future. So in this fellowship, we also spoke to some of our HRE USA members who are eager to bridge the gap between youth activists. And we're hoping to continue to build upon this field of human rights advocacy for youth activists in the future. As Christina said, and kind of tying back to that as well, I was able to help co-facilitate the Training is Action series workshop on children's rights and youth activism. My other co-facilitators are on here. I know I saw Maddie, Adriana. I don't know who I'm missing. I can't see everybody's faces, but it's great to see you both. And here we were able to connect with other youth and adults who also wanted to incorporate children's rights into the conversation on human rights advocacy and into education. We are also hoping to continue to build these partnerships that were established in this series and to establish a positive developmental environment for youth activists to learn and grow and to further their experience in human rights advocacy. So it's just a brief kind of touch on some of the work that I did in this fellowship. I am so grateful. I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone at HRE USA, but especially my mentors from this past summer, Christina and Christy. I have learned, you know, skills that are immeasurable and will continue just to further solidify my desire to remain in the human rights field. And this fellowship has been so crucial and important in doing that. So I thank you both so much. And along the lines of youth activism, I'll pass it along to Adriana, who is another youth activist I've had the pleasure of working with through HRE USA, who's doing crucial and inspiring work. So I'll pass it along to Adriana to hear more.
Sorry, Adriana, if I could jump in real quick before you say, I just also want to acknowledge Natalie and her mentors, Jake and Lena. She did work supporting the regional rep outreach and research there. And also to say that the Edmonds Fellowship is funded. We think it's really important to financially support our fellows. So thank you to everybody who contributed to help through our Giving is Gorgeous campaign this summer. And we'd encourage folks to contribute again because it helps enable the brilliant work of these wonderful fellows. So thank you. All right, thanks, Adriana. I'll turn it to you.
Of course. Well, thank you. I appreciate the warm introduction, Hallie. My name is Adriana. I'm 18 years old. I just started my first year in college, but I'm originally from San Francisco. I have the opportunity to be on the steering committee as a member for HRE USA. And I've already got to work on the TOS workshops. And so, you know, I'm really happy to be here and honored to have been invited to speak to people I've worked with, look up to, and am really excited to meet. So the World Health Organization announced earlier today that the 2022 theme of Human Rights Day is dignity, freedom, and justice for all. And so to me, human rights is not just about giving basic needs for people to survive. It's that all people have the opportunity to thrive beyond their basic needs. And I was asked to do a little call to action for young people here today. And so I think that's a really important aspect because when we talk about human rights, young people should be invited to be a part of the conversation. I've worked for the past few years in San Francisco writing and enacting youth-related policy, as well as on San Francisco's Child-Friendly Cities Initiative, which is a global campaign by UNICEF. And so from working with young students, youth organizers, with my own peers, I can confidently say that young people understand the hunger to create a more equitable world particularly well. After all, we are the ones who will be around inheriting this world built from the current actions and policies being created now. And so I'm really hopeful to be here with adult allies and youth activists who are actively working towards building that better world for the next generation. Hope. You know, that's a common word I hear about the unique passion youth have. And so what we urgently need is to turn that hunger, that hope, that curiosity that young people have into action. We need human rights to be explicitly incorporated in school curriculums, which was mentioned earlier in this meeting. We need policy writers and decision makers to consider young people as legitimate partners with ideas to contribute. And so, to fellow young people, we may not always be given the direct opportunity to be involved, but we must take the momentum behind us to continue addressing the injustices we see. After all, it was young people who led the climate justice movement, the many youth voices who led the calls for racial justice, Indigenous people's rights, gun reform, you name it, young people have been actively working towards social justice. And so, yeah, we are the ones inheriting this world, and so we need to fight for the civic participation to build that world we want to live in. We also need to demand a seat at the table as new policies are created, to form coalitions with one another, and to actively engage in human rights education on a day-to-day basis, even if it's not International Human Rights Day. And finally, to wrap things up, young people have the ideas and deserve the opportunities to express them. And so I'll encourage adult allies to call on young people as equal partners to fight for human rights on every level, and to empower us to work towards our common goal of dignity, freedom, and justice for all. So thank you so much for everyone's time, and it was great to be here today. Happy International Human Rights Day.
Thank you so much, Adriana and Hallie. Those were just wonderful calls to action. And we have a couple of high school students who are going to give us our last call to action before we turn it over for our closing. So I just want to also have a shout out right now to Yvonne Bissing and Eric Knudsen, who are new Children's Rights Working Group chairs, and they co-sponsored or launched the through Salem State University this summer, the Children's Rights Conference, and we now are hosting all the presentations. So Adriana spoke there, as well as a student group from California, so we can drop that video in the chat. But we have it on our website, and so there's great wealths of wonderful presentations. But now I'll hand it off to Jake, the teacher for this project. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I just want to introduce real quickly Shireen Anvala and Kevin Masonette, both youth advisory team members for the Human Rights Close to Home project coming out of UConn. I'm not going to say much. They are fantastic. And we're going to give a few minutes to share a little bit about their work. So I'll turn over to Kevin and Shireen.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name's Kevin Masonette. I am a senior at Manchester High School in Connecticut. So what really got me into human rights education was the courses I took, and I took a UConn level human rights course in my school. Human rights is mandatory in Manchester High School, and so we were a part of the HRCH as well, which I'll get into, and I'm sure Shireen will discuss as well. But during my human rights course, I was invited to be part of the youth advisory team, part of the Human Rights Close to Home initiative. And the Human Rights Close to Home initiative has existed for some time. It's always pushed for human rights education to inspire students across the state and to provide the resources necessary for teachers to educate their students on human rights. And but just last year, the youth advisory team was created. And so I was invited to be one of the first members, along with Shireen and others. And our goal for Shireen and I, as well as others, we worked on the Youth Summit, which would be a gathering of hundreds of students from all across Connecticut public schools to the UConn campus, where we'd have workshops, creative speakers and such, all related to human rights and providing an engaging and educative experience for all students. So you can see at the top of this slide, we've got some of them. We had a panel of women's empowerment speakers, including the Connecticut Secretary of State. We have some protest signs being created by attendees. And I mean, like, I may be biased, but I think it was just a complete and utter success. I was so proud to be a part of it. And like, I've heard from some of the teachers related to human rights in Manchester High School now, saying that their students are just like obsessed with the Youth Summit, that they really want to, they're just waiting for the next one. And I just think it was a total success. And I'll pass it off to Shireen to explain why it was such a success.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Shireen. I am a junior at the Center for Global Studies in Norwalk, Connecticut. And yeah, I can talk a little bit about how I kind of ended up on this amazing team. So my human rights education began in sophomore year, so just last year, where every high school student is required to take a civics course. But kind of outside of that, I noticed that the human rights education in civic courses was pretty limited in my personal high school. And as we've seen that in, high schools across the country, that slow fade of civic classes not being emphasized as much as math or history or science. So I was really excited to be given this opportunity to work on the youth advisory team for this, for UConn's Human Rights Close to Home, where I was really able to engage more in my interest in human rights. I recently actually launched a charity startup, I guess you could say, called Alara, which in Persian means she who speaks from the heart. And the goal with that initiative is to empower the women of Iran who are so bravely protesting against the repressive regime of the Islamic Republic, one bracelet at a time. So we have made about 100 hand-beaded bracelets that are inspired by traditional Iranian jewelry. And we sold them at school for a few days. And in 3 days, we made around $700, which was amazing. And we are intending to donate that money to the Abdurrahman and Burman Center, which fights for human rights for people in Iran. And we really hope to expand that, expand our organization. And but in terms of our youth advisory team, to talk a little bit about that, our roles really range from everything from logistics in terms of creating forms for applications, securing buildings for this event, all the way to creating themes. What is this event going to look like? How are we going to make it engaging with workshops, hands-on ideas? And so I can share a couple sub-themes that we have for our next year, or yes, next year's Youth Summit, which will be on January 11th. So one of them is creative storytelling, the idea that, the creative expression in terms of maybe on a canvas or on a runway or on a plate in terms of food, how that tells a story of a human rights struggle, and how, we can take that creative approach in learning and observing those different issues. Another one is finding your place in activism. So we as young people are often very passionate about a slew of different causes, but how are we going to enact and how are we going to make change? So to kind of find your passion, find your niche, find your cause, and kind of play on that to really make an impact. So yes, that is kind of what our jobs have looked like. And we are super excited for our second ever Youth Summit, like I said, January 11th. And yeah, we hope it'll be another great success.
And one last thing I'd like to add is with the bottom two photos, those are photos of Shireen and I, as well as other students presenting about our role in human rights education at the National Council of the Social Studies. And we talked about like something similar to this. We talked about our successes with the Youth Summit. The photos at the top are literally a slide that we had in it. And so we talked about that. We answered some questions related to our human rights roles. And we talked critically about how the Youth Summit is adaptable and that it can be a model for like school communities all over the place. The Youth Summit, like, no matter how few resources you have, you can always adapt the idea of the Youth Summit, because it's not just the two of us who are so engaged in human rights. it's everybody. Any student I know could be extremely interested in human rights as well. And so I think the Youth Summit is something that can be spread all over. That's all. Thank you all very much. It's such an honor to be here.
Thank you again so much, Sharon and Kevin, for your brilliant organizing that you're doing. We're so appreciative of that. And as all good things must come to a close, so we are getting towards the end of our time here, but I do want to mention thank you again for celebrating the 74th anniversary, and especially as we look towards next year, the 75th anniversary milestone. But as we all know, and as I think we heard from folks, you know, human rights isn't just about, of course, 1 year or one document even, and we will continue to do what we do best, all of us, which is to educate our communities. So in closing, we do have a few tools that we want to amplify, and we'll also put in the chat. So want to share this with you all. First off, we have our HRE USA online shop, and we have booklets, we have posters. So please check that out and share and let us know if you need resources. We're here to support you with that. And also we have a human rights game, which is super exciting. So 40% of the proceeds actually go to support our education work. So please check that out as well. With the Brainery, our collaboration, those are just some tools that we offer to support, amplify this movement. Also, I do want to say that, you know, as we all know, we definitely know this, these resources are very much people powered, and we actually look to our communities for the resources that we need to support this work. So I know all of us know how that is. So for this reason, I'm sharing one of our really, really special campaigns, and I want to thank Christina and Christy for really launching this and getting this off the ground, which is Ignite and Unite for Human Rights. So that is our Give Gab campaign. We'll also put that in the chat. So we actually really need people's support. We're trying to raise $10,000 before the end of this year as a part of, so please, please, please support. Please share with others. We're actually, I think we're already at 25% of the campaign, which is super exciting. Thanks to you all, thanks to folks who have already donated. So please share. We would really love, you know, just continuing to raise we are responsible for raising the resources that we need together. So thanks again for all those who have been doing this work. Yeah, and we'll put in the chat in a second. And then also, lastly, thank you to everyone again who has contributed with both human and financial support these past 11 years for HRE USA. Again, you all make this work happen. And also what I've noticed, especially it's really clear today, is that this is multi-generational work, right? So as folks have mentioned, that this is work that must be done together. Youth are at the forefront of this work with adult allies. So I want to remind that, and I think we all heard that today. So thank you. And we want to keep that really clear. So as closing, we want to honor, and we want to honor the future generation of human rights educators, and present and future, you know, doing this work. So we'll close off. We're going to close off for now, but we'll have an introduction of a youth reading of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Voices of Hope, UDHR celebration. Thank you to Human Rights Watch Student Task Force. Thanks for Generation Human Rights and ACT Center for Disability Leadership for putting this reading together. So again, we'll close out after the video, but thank you so much for being here. And yeah, take care of ourselves, and let's take care of our communities. Thank you.
And for those who have to leave, we'll drop in the YouTube video link as well. So we thank you very much for being here.
On December 10th, 1948, the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted and proclaimed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the UDHR. This declaration guarantees the rights of all people. December 10th is recognized as Human Rights Day worldwide.
The General Assembly proclaims this Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations, and shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms.
Todos los seres humanos nacen iguales en dignidad y derechos.
다행이죠.いかなる種類の差別からの自由。
任何人不得使为奴隶或奴役，一切形式的奴隶制度和奴隶买卖均应予以禁止。
المادة الخامسة لا يجوز إخضاع أحد للتعذيب والمعاملة الحاطة بالكرامة.
Todo ser humano tiene derecho en todas partes al reconocimiento de su personalidad jurídica.
모든 사람은 법 앞에 평등하며 어떠한 차별도 없이 법의 동등한 보호를 받을 권리를 가진다. 모든 사람은 이 선언에 위반되는 어떠한 차별과 그러한 차별의 선동으로부터 동등한 보호를 받을 권리를 가진다.
Artículo 8. Toda persona tiene derecho a un recurso efectivo ante los tribunales nacionales competentes que la ampare contra actos que violen sus derechos fundamentales reconocidos por la Constitución o por la ley.
Ningú pot ser arrestat, detingut ni exiliat arbitràriament.
Article 10. Everyone is entitled to a fair and public hearing by an independent tribunal.
Artículo 11. Toda persona acusada de delito tiene derecho a que se presuma su inocencia mientras no se pruebe su culpabilidad, conforme a la ley y en el juicio público en el que se le hayan asegurado todas las garantías necesarias para su defensa.
Article 12. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, home, or correspondence.
Article 13. Everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state.
Ogni individuo ha il diritto di cercare e di godere in altri paesi asilo dalle persecuzioni.
Article 15. Everyone has the right to a nationality. No one should be deprived nor denied the right to change his nationality.
Article 16. Men and women of full age, without any limitation, have the right to marry and to have a family.
Her şahıs tek başına veya başkalarıyla birlikte mal ve mülk sahibi olmak hakkına haizdir.
Każdy człowiek ma prawo wolności myśli, sumienia i wyznania.
Prawo to odróżnienie swobody zmiany przyznania lub wiary oraz swobody głoszenia swego wyznania lub wiary bądź indywidualnie i razem z innymi ludźmi, publicznie i prywatnie, przez nauczanie, praktykowanie, uprawianie kultu i wspieranie obyczajów.
Artículo 19. Todos tienen el derecho a la libertad de expresión y opinión sin intromisión.
제20조. 모든 사람은 평화적인 집회는 결사의 자유에 대한 권리를 가진다.
Toute personne a droit à la liberté de réunion et d'association. Nul ne peut être obligé de faire partie d'une association.
Article 21. Everyone has the right to take part in freely elected government. Everyone should get a vote and all votes should be equal.
Article 22. Everyone has the right to Social Security, indispensable for his dignity and the free development of his personality.
Article 23. You have the right to work and to get a salary that allows you to live and support your family.
Article 24. Everyone has the right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitation of working hours and periodic holidays with pay.
Article 25. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the well-being of himself and his family.
Artículo 26. Todos tienen el derecho a la educación. La educación se orientará al pleno desarrollo de la identidad humana y a la consolidación del respeto de los derechos humanos.
Education will help me build my own personality.
We belong in the same classroom as everybody else, not segregated from everyone.
If we need help, we get help.
Just because we have a disability doesn't mean we can't reach our full potential.
Artículo 27. Toda persona tiene derecho a tomar parte libremente en la vida cultural de la comunidad.
Article 28. Everyone is entitled to a social and international order in which the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration can be fully realized. Article 29. Everyone has duties towards a community within which his personality can fully develop. The law should guarantee human rights.
Article 30. No society and no human being in any part of the world should act in such a way as to destroy the rights that we have just shared.
Thank you all.
And happy Human Rights Day.